We have produced a Socioeconomic Impact Assessment, or a SEIA, on the government's telecommunications spectrum, which most people would know as cell phone policy. And that is done by us because we are amongst the world's leading experts. It is now obligatory for every policy and law to be preceded by a SEIA. This is the first one which can be regarded as a model, and it is on this all-important policy of broadcasting, radio waves, TV, cell phones and more. By far the biggest and most amazing accomplishment since 1994 in the new South Africa after apartheid is the telecommunications or cell phone broadcasting network operators. The government created a duopoly, as it calls it, two big operators. Vodacom and MTN have produced coverage in South Africa that is comparable with the best in the world. We are one of the highest rates of cell phone usage in the world. So this is an amazing accomplishment, and this was done despite the government's bad policies, and the government expected them to produce low-cost telecommunications, especially data, when the government itself withheld the spectrum or wavelengths which are necessary to provide affordable and competitive data, and then produced a competition policy document saying that there was not sufficient competition in the market, even though we now have 6 operators. I should also add that there is a terrible misunderstanding about the nature of competition. It is assumed that if there is market dominance or few operators, that there is not competition. This is a complete misunderstanding. Competition exists when markets are contestable, in other words, when anyone is free to enter the market. And so what we have in South Africa is 2 firms competing, contesting the market. Now we have 6, and if the government continues with the idea of a 7th operator, the Wireless Open Access Network, or WOAN, then we will have 7.
My name is Christoph Klein, and I'm now going to take you through the key findings of the Socioeconomic Impact Assessment. What you see on this slide is the relationship between using frequency in a specific band and the coverage area. What is important to understand now is that spectrum in lower frequency ranges, for example spectrum in the 700 or 800 MHz band, allows mobile operators to cover far larger geographical areas compared to using spectrum in the higher frequency ranges of 1.8 or 2.1 GHz. MTN and Vodacom are still using the spectrum in the 1.8 and 2.1 GHz band, the last of which they received in 2005, so 16 years ago. Not having available spectrum in the 700, 800 MHz bands comes with substantial economic implications. The most common carrier aggregation combination is actually LTE 800 and LTE in the frequency band of 2.6 GHz. In South Africa, both of these bands are not available to Vodacom and MTN, so that 75% of the population that are more or less served by these 2 leading carriers do not actually enjoy the benefits of carrier aggregation, which comes at a socioeconomic cost. The failed digital migration has imposed high socioeconomic costs on the South African population, and the data prices are higher than they would be if spectrum had been released, due to the lack of digital dividend spectrum, which means that there is lower coverage in rural areas. And secondly, we do not have the spectrum that's ideal to produce efficiently data in dense urban areas. The important question we now have to ask is whether the policy proposals that are based on these ideas actually meet the criterion of evidence-based policymaking. So is there any scientific underpinning or historical empirical experience that support their ideas?